Kill me! I'm here! Kill me!
Hey everybody, this is Matthew Movies coming at you with my review of the 2016 biopic Christine. Now first off, obviously as I just mentioned, this is the 2016 biopic. This isn't the 80s John Carpenter classic horror film, which I am thinking about reviewing soon, but I need to rewatch it first. This is a completely different movie despite the fact that it has the same title. It happens. This is a very, very interesting movie. It's based off of a true event, a very infamous event that happened in the 1970s in Florida. I'm going to say what the story was that inspired this movie because this movie wouldn't exist if it wasn't for the inciting event that made it so this woman's life was looked at a lot more in depth than it would have been otherwise. And I knew full well what was going to end up happening at the end of this movie throughout, and it actually, I think, is one of the few films where I'd say a spoiler like that will actually make the film more interesting, because I could totally see how, without knowing where this movie was going, how it might feel kind of pedestrian or maybe even uninteresting. It would be a good character piece, but I could see how somebody may not love it based off of that, because it does tell her life story in ways that you've seen in other films before. It doesn't come off as necessarily all that original if you don't know where this movie is going to end up going. So I am going to say what made this woman's life, Christine Chubbuck, what made her life so interesting to people and why people looked into it so much. And so if you don't want to hear that, if you do want to see this movie one day, don't listen. But I can't imagine people knowing about this movie without knowing where it came from. Basically, she was a news reporter who suffered from depression, and one day in the middle of a telecast, something went awry with one of the feeds, and it was supposed to come up. Clip was supposed to come up, and so instead of going into a news story, Christine just started talking about how the station was all about blood and guts, and that they were going to do something for the first time ever and cover a suicide attempt, and then shot herself in the head. And she did end up succumbing to her injury, and that's what made people so interested in her story. I mean, one, obviously right off the hop, if you were watching on that day, that would be a very traumatizing thing to see on TV, and it's such a unique thing to have happened, and such a horrifying thing to have happened, that people are understandably going to be fascinated by what inspired her to take such a drastic choice in her life, and why she felt like that was her best option and that kind of thing. And it made her life one, unfortunately it was what made her people more interested in her life, which is, I say that it's unfortunate because she did have a very interesting life before that. I mean, like, she was a news reporter. She was a very, very intelligent woman, and had her if you watch this movie, and when I've looked into it, I mean, this movie isn't in like anything else, it's not going to be 100% accurate. There are definitely parts where the writer even admitted that there's parts that he imagined this is how it might have happened, but at the same time there are accounts of the type of person she was from people who knew her, and it definitely looks like she was just a whip smart woman who just had some emotional issues in her life and just wasn't where she wanted to be. And most people who knew her felt like her depression was based on the fact that she wanted to be married and have kids, and she didn't feel like that was going to happen for her. And it's just an awful thing to think of somebody who felt like their life was so disappointing and so not what they wanted it to be, and felt powerless to make it what they wanted it to be, that they would make such a horrible choice for not only themselves but the people in their lives that they care about. It's just a horrible thing that she did, and you know, I'm not saying like, I'm not trying to cast blame on her or judgment on her for making such a choice. It's just horrible that she felt like that was the choice that made sense for her, and it was horrible that it caused such pain for those around her. And this movie really fleshes her out as a human being, makes her look like a lot, like makes you like look at her much more as a person instead of the headline of this woman who did this thing on television one day, because you know, it is such a sensationalistic thing. And it's really interesting because her career was, she was being pushed towards covering, like, you know, the guts and the gore, and the if it bleeds it leads phrase is said in this movie. And she fought against that. She wanted to cover things that she felt were happier, and that she felt like mattered. And like, she was for instance, one of her major stories that she was covering right up until her death was a zoning crisis in Florida at the time, because she felt like that mattered, that would affect people's everyday lives, other than, more so than just looking at you know, something horrible that happened to somebody, that looking at footage of somebody in one of the worst moments in their life. She was so against that. And then when she did what she did, it's funny because I think a lot of people became interested in her for the same reason they're interested in those news stories to begin with, that she was fighting against. But at the same time, what she was doing was also the ultimate commentary on that kind of mentality. So there's, you know, there's a real complex nature to her story and who she was as a person. And Rebecca Hall is the actress who plays her in this movie. And if you don't know her by name, I'd be very surprised if you know, film people didn't know her by face. And then you have Michael C. Hall, the gentleman who played Dexter. He's pretty much the only other like really knowable name in this movie. And just the cast from beginning to end is solid. Everybody does such a they all come off like such real people. I mean, even you have one of the stars of Veep, the tall kind of gangly guy that's always played for laughs, and he's in this movie. And you know, it shows that the actor's range, because he's not anything like he is in Veep in this movie. He's a very organic, like, he's a very real person. He's very, there's multi levels to him. He feels like a person with real emotions, and everybody does across the board in this film. Even for instance, there's a character in this movie that is the new boyfriend of Christine's mom, and he's got maybe in a minute or 2 minutes of the film as far as screen time, but you really kind of get a little bit of a feel for who he is, just in his physicality, and in the way he deals with the few situations that he's in. It's really a good marker of a story told well. And I just think this is a remarkable film, and I think it's a shame that fewer people know about this one. And you know, I'm not casting blame on anybody. I barely knew about this myself, and I only really was only really inspired to watch it fairly recently. And you know, I mainly, more than anything else, I would just love it if more people checked out this movie and let me know what they thought. Please hit me up in the comments below. Let me know if you think that this movie sounds interesting. Please hit that like button. It does awesome things for my channel. And subscribe. You know, I love talking to you guys about movies and the things that I'm passionate about. And if you subscribe, hopefully that means you'll be coming back and you'll be able to check out more of my videos and hear more of my thoughts. And that, you know, that just means the world to me. And I'd be very, very appreciative of that. And you know, you can hit that notification bell. That way you get a little notification coming up telling you that I put up something new, so you can come check it out. Or you know, if you have the time at that point. Other than that, have yourself a great day.